go live. All right, so good night, everyone. So good night to everyone who's here in class. Good night to all of my subscribers, to everybody who's here watching me here now on YouTube. Good night. So tonight, as I said before, we're going to be doing some statistics. All right, so solely statistical questions tonight, all past paper questions as well. All right, so if you have any questions, you can write your questions in the chat. I'll answer as best as I can. All right, and so let's begin like this. All right, so and this is our first question here. So we're going to start with this pie chart question. Let's zoom in a bit. So it says a group of students wrote a physics exam. Each of the students achieved a grade 1, 2, 3, or 4. The pie chart below shows the results. And as you can see your little results right there. They give us 39 students here. So they say range is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So the only thing we're giving 39 students 117 degrees. So 39 students achieved a grade 3. Determine the total number of students who wrote the examination. All right, so how would we do something like this here now? All right, so what would we do? All right, if you were in the exam and you got a question like this, what would we do? Do we know how to do a pie chart question? Do we remember how to do a pie chart question? A lot of times these questions are taught in grade 8, grade 9. So a lot of times by the time we reach grade 10, grade 11, sometimes we don't remember exactly how we're supposed to work out these type of questions here. All right, but in the chat here now, anybody can tell me how would we do a question like this? Or anybody in class here, how would we do something like this? So Mr. Green, Miss Smith, Miss Kelly, what would we do here? Right, do we remember this one right here? All right, if not, let's look at this and let's see what we would do. So a group of students wrote a physics exam. Each of the students achieved a grade 1, 2, 3, or 4. So the pie chart below shows the results. 39 students achieved a grade 3. Determine the total number of students who wrote the examination. All right, so whenever you're doing a pie chart question here, there are a couple of formulas that we need to make sure that we know, and this is one of them. All right, so let's get my pencil. And so it's the angle over 360 degrees multiplied by the total is equal to, let's call that the amount. All right, so the angle divided by 360 degrees, and you might be wondering, where does this 360 degrees come from? Remember, we're doing a pie chart here. A pie chart is basically a circle, and a circle has a total of 360 degrees. So that's where our 360 degrees comes from. Theta right here represents an angle in mathematics. So whatever the angle is that you're given, the total here, whatever the total is, and then the amount. And so that's the formula that we're going to be using here now to help us to answer our different questions. So 39 students achieved a grade 3. Determine the total number of students who wrote the exam. So using that formula, let's see what we're going to come up with right here. So 117, that's the angle that we're given. So 117 divided by 360. Then I multiply that by the total. We do not know what the total is. So let me call that T. And that's equal to how many students? They told us that it is 39 students. That's equal to 39. So all we have to do here now is just try our best to see if we can solve the resulting equation. So let's multiply the numerators together. That's 117 over 117. All right, so 117, let's just zoom up our screen here a bit. So 117 times t, that's 117t. No, 117t. over 360, and that's equal to 39. All right. And so what would we do here? We cross multiply. 117t is equal to 39 times 360. And then if we want to find our t now, we divide both sides by 117. T is equal to, and if we plug that into our calculators, can you guys tell me what are we going to get for our answer right here?
120.
120. All right, so 120. That's the total number of students, so 120 students. All right, and again, it all comes from the formula that we have up here. All right, so our formula right here. So depending on what the question is now, you might have to edit the formula a little bit. But this is basically the formula that we're going to be using. All right. So 120 students. All right, so that's the answer for the first one here. The second part here now, it says the ratio of the number of students who achieved a grade 1, 2, or 4 is 2 to 4 to 3. A student passed the examination if he or she achieved a grade 1, 2, or 3. How many students passed the examination? All right. So remember here now, there are a few things that we know. If we go back to our diagram, we know that 117 degrees represents grade 3. All right, so 117 degrees represents grade 3. What does that mean? That now therefore means that everything else, when I add that to 117, is going to give me the total, which we should know is 360 degrees. So that is something for us to bear in mind. Another thing that we need to bear in mind here as well, all right, another thing that we need to bear in mind here as well is the fact that the total number of students that we got was 120. And usually in CXC, whenever they give you a question, right, part one is usually going to be, no, it's going to be related to part two right here. So basically for part one of our question, we got 120 students, which is the total. And what do we know? We also know that 39 out of that 120 got a range 3. All right. The question is now telling us that the ratio of students who achieved a range 1, 2, or 4 is 2 to 4 to 3. All right, so that's the ratio right there. A student passed the exam if he got a range 1, 2, and 3. So make sure that you keep all of that important piece of information in mind, and you do not do the wrong thing by not paying attention to exactly what the information is saying. All right. Remember, you only pass if you get a 1, 2, or 3. So do not make, because the first part of it is talking about a range 1, 2, and 4. You use that information and answer all of the question and then end up not doing the right thing. All right. So let's continue here now. So if we want to get our answer, the first thing that we need to do here is that we need to figure out how many students got either a 1, 2, or 4. And how can we do that? We know the total amount of students, and we also know how many students got a range 3. So the total amount of students is 120. 39 students got a range 3. So can you tell me now, how many students would have gotten either a range 1, 2, or 4?
Sir, 81.
All right, 81. And I'm seeing that in the chat right here. All right, and for the persons here who are joining me on YouTube, make sure that you know that you can answer your questions as well in the chat. Right. All right, so 81 students. That's the amount of students who got either a range 1, 2, or 4. All right. What else do we know about range 1, 2, or 4? We know that it is in the ratio 2 to 4 to 3. And for those students who know about ratio, we know that whenever we get these questions here, we always need to figure out the total ratio, the total amount of parts. So when I add these together, I'm going to get 9 parts. All right. So 81 students, 9 parts. Always try to figure out the value of 1 part. So 1 part is going to be my 81 divided by 9, one part is basically representing 9 students. All right. So one part is representing 9 students. So if we know that one part is representing 9 students, good night, Mr. Small, we can use that information to figure out how many students got a range 1, how many students got a range 2, and also how many students got a range 4. However, we don't really care about how many got a range 4 because the question is asking us for how many passed the exam. So we're going to figure out now for grade 1, it is 2 parts, so you multiply the 2 by the amount for one part, and so 2 times 9, that is 18 students. For grade 2, it is 4 parts, so I multiply that by 9, and that is 36 students. And from the first piece of information, we already knew that there were 39 students who got range or grade 3. All right, so we can now answer our question. They want to know how many students passed the exam, so we're going to add all of these together. 18 plus 36 plus 39. Can I get an answer right here?
Sir, 93.
93. 93 students. All right. But something doesn't seem wrong. Something doesn't seem right there. Is that it? All right, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So 93 students. And so you always have to make sure that you answer the question that you are asked. All right. I know that there are a lot of students who were doing this who would have probably added the value for the 4 as well just because it was right there. But you have to make sure that you answer the question that you are asked. So don't make CXC tricky. So don't give it the marks. All right. Next now it says determine the value of the angle for the sector representing grade 1 in the pie chart. So let's go back to our pie chart right here. No. All right, that's our pie chart. So this is the piece representing our grade 1. That's the piece representing our grade 1. What do we know about grade 1? What I know about grade 1 is that grade 1 has 18 students. All right, so 18 students. All right. What do we also know? Remember that this is the formula that we use. But there's also another formula that we can use as well when you want to figure out the amount of degrees, or basically like the sector angle. So let's look at what that formula is right now. All right. So if you want to figure out the sector angle, so you based on the formula that we have above, it is the amount over the total, and then you multiply it by the total amount of degrees in a circle, and we know that there are 360 degrees in a circle. That gives us our sector angle. So that's how we get our sector angle. All right. So what's the amount? If we go back up, we know that grade 1, that's 18 students. So 18 students. What's the total? That's 120 students. You then multiply that by the total amount of degrees, which is 360 degrees. And can I get an answer right here?
54 degrees.
54 degrees. All right, perfect. 54 degrees. All right, so 54 degrees. And so these two formulas, I should say, very important when it comes to working out a question like this where you're given pie chart. So they don't really give, they might not give you a lot of pie chart questions, but usually when they give it, a lot of students end up not knowing exactly what to do because we focus on our cumulative frequencies and all of those things, and we neglect our pie charts. All right, so these full formulas here, those are the formulas that are most important right here. So let's move along. Here's another pie chart question. And I'll give you a little chance here to try to work this out. So students in a group were asked to name their favorite sport. Their responses are shown on the pie chart below. And for the students who are in my class, you know that you don't have to focus on writing down all of the question because I will provide you with the document with the answers afterwards. For those who are on YouTube, of course, you know that you can pause the video here and write down anything that is important to you. So students in a group were asked to name their favorite sport. Their responses are shown on the pie chart below. So the first thing they want us to do is to calculate the value of x. So I would like somebody to do that, someone to tell me what's the answer for x and how would we get that in the first place. So what is your answer and exactly what did you do to get your answer?
Sir, my answer is 221 degrees, sir. Sir, I subtracted the sum of the angle of degrees for cricket and tennis and
Uh-huh.
subtract it by 260.
All right. So repeat your answer. You got
21.
229, all right, 21. All right. So you said that you subtracted that. So calculate the value of x. So if we look in our diagram here, again, this is a pie chart question. It's a circle. That means the total amount is 360 degrees. All right. And so, hold on. Let you in. All right. So we know that the total amount is 360 degrees. But what do we know here? Right. What do we know here? We know that out of this 360 degrees, all right, cricket is 94 degrees, tennis is 45 degrees, and x is football, sorry, is x. So if we want to find that x, which is football, we first add these two together. So we put them in our brackets. So after we find the sum, and what's the sum of that? 94 plus that, 140, no, not 140, 139,
Yes, sir, 139.
139. So 139, and that gives us 221 degrees. Good night, Miss Williams. All right, next, it now says what percentage of the students chose cricket? So again, let's see you try to figure that out. So what percentage of the students chose cricket? And the formula that you would use is very similar to one of those formulas that we used above. The only difference here is that it's talking about percentage.
Sir, 26.1%.
26.1%. Anybody else? Is that what we're all getting? Yeah. And how did you get that 26.1%? Now, what did you do? Right. And the fact that they talk about percentage, what number do we know has to definitely be used right here?
100.
All right, 100. All right. Hold on. All right, so 100. And so what exactly did you use now? So what do you do here now? What do we know? They said cricket. When we go to our diagram, what do we know about cricket? What did they tell us about cricket? Right, what do we know?
Sir, it is 94 degrees on the pie chart.
It
It has
is
an angle of
94.
94 degrees.
So it has an angle of 94 degrees. All right, so cricket here now. It has an angle of 94. Let me add mixture of 94 degrees. And because this is a circle, that is actually 94 degrees out of a total of what? What's the total?
360 degrees.
So the amount is 94. The total in this case would be 360 degrees. And because they say percentage, you multiply that by 100. And that does indeed give us 26.11, I think 111%. Right. And again, they don't give us pie chart questions a lot, but we have to make sure that we're still prepared to make sure we can work out any of these that we're given. It then says, given that 40 students chose tennis, calculate the total number of students in the group. All right, so let's zoom out a little. So that you can see that. All right. So it says, given that 40 students chose tennis, calculate the total number of students in the group.
Sir, I got 220 students.
You got 320 students.
Yes,
All right,
sir.
and again, the formula that we use here is basically almost the same as I've been using from before. All right, so given that 40 students chose tennis, calculate the total number of students in the group. So we have to go to the information that we're given. When we look at tennis, we realize that they gave us 45 degrees. So yes, so tennis is 45 degrees. So using that information, I know that tennis is 45 out of the total, which is 360 degrees. All right. So we're going to use that information to help us. So tennis, which is 45 out of the 360 degrees. All right, out of the 360 degrees. When I multiply that by the total, oh, hold on. Oh, hold on. My app that I was using just crashed. Give me a sec. Let me try to get it back up. Hello, can you hear me again?
Yes, sir.
I actually lost internet connection. All right. All right, let's start screen sharing back again. All right. Oh no, not that. All right, so there we are. So what does it say here? No. Determine the value of the angle representing grade 1. All right, we got this already. This was 26.1. 11. Calculate the value of x. What did we get for the value of x again? I think x was equal to 221 degrees. What percentage of the students chose cricket? What did we get for the percentage again? 54. Was it 54? No, not 54. What did we get for cricket again? Or was that what we're working on? No, we're working on the total percentage of students who chose cricket. 94 over 360 times 100. What's the answer to that?
Sir, 26.111.
Oh, oh, this is the one that we got the 26.1114.
Sir, if you're talking, we're not hearing.
Oh, sorry. All right, so the total for that was 320. Yeah. All right, so we're moving on to this question now. All right, so for this question, I want you guys to draw the table. Draw the table. So you don't have to write the question, but draw the table for me, please. All right, are we finished drawing that? We should be finished drawing that.
Yes, sir.
All right, so lower class boundary. So it says for the class 21 to 30, determine the lower class boundary. So how do I get the lower class boundary? To get the lower class boundary, it is the sum of lower class limits of previous class and no, not lower class limits of previous class, the upper class limit of the previous class. So upper class limit of previous class and lower class limit of the given class. All right, so that's basically what we're going to be doing right here now. And then you're going to divide that by 2. All right. So what is the upper class limit of the previous class? So they said 21 to 30, which is this class right here. 21 to 30 was the previous class. That's the one that came before. What's the upper class limit? The upper class limit is basically the bigger number. So what's the upper class limit? The upper class limit would be 20 plus the lower class limit of the given class. So the class that we're talking about is 21 to 30. The lower class limit is the smaller number, that is 21. And then you divide that sum by 2. So when we work that out, we're going to get 41 divided by 2, and my answer is 20.5. So that's the lower class boundary of the class 21 to 30. Next class now is asking us for the class width. And again, that's the class width of 21 to 30. So the class width of 21 to 30. Let me give you a minute to try that. The class width of 21 to 30. All right. Class width. To get the class width is the difference between the upper class boundary and the lower class boundary. All right. So our lower class boundary here is 20.5. All right. And the upper class boundary would be 30 plus 31 divided by 2. So our upper class boundary is 30 plus 31 divided by 2. That's 30.5. So 30.5 minus our 20.5, our class width is 10. Our class width is 10. Next, it now says how many vehicles were recorded in the class 31 to 40. And then a vehicle is chosen at random from the 150 vehicles. What's the probability that the volume of petrol needed to fill its tank is more than 50.5 liters? Leave your answer as a fraction. All right. All right, so the first one is pretty simple. How many vehicles were recorded in the class 31 to 40? You should have your table. All right, so you drew your table, so you should be able to figure that one out. How many vehicles were recorded in the class 31 to 40? And remember that when you look in your table, you're not given frequency. You're not given frequency. You're given cumulative frequency. All right, so make sure that you're making a note of that difference right there. Is it what? 18? 18. Remember cumulative frequency. Let me just say a little bit about cumulative frequency. The first one represents the frequency of the first one. So that would mean that 24 is the frequency of this. Cool. But then what is 59? 59, we got 59 by adding 24 to the frequency of this. So if I want the frequency of 21 to 30, I have to actually subtract the previous value in the cumulative frequency from the value in its class, which is the 59, to get the actual frequency of this. So using that, you should be able to figure out what you're supposed to do now to get the frequency of 31 to 40. All right, so remember that those are our values there. All right, so B, how many vehicles were recorded in the class 31 to 40? So as I was saying, all right, so this is not frequency, this is cumulative frequency. So there's a difference here. All right, so the frequency of this is 24, but how did we get 59? We actually got 59 by adding 24 to something, which is actually the frequency of this one. All right, So if I want the frequency of the 21 to 30, so if I want the frequency of the 21 to 30, what I'm going to have to do is to actually subtract the one that comes before it, which is the 24. And so the frequency of this one is 35. That's if I wanted the frequency of this, but that's not what I want. I want the frequency of 31 to 40. So what do? I subtract the cumulative frequency of the previous class, which is 59, from this. And then when I take 59 from this, what do I get for the answer? My answer is 42. So it's 101 minus 59, that is 42 vehicles. It then says a vehicle is chosen at random from the 150 vehicles. What is the probability that the volume of petrol needed to fill its tank is more than 50.5 liters? Leave your answer as a fraction. All right. So if we were to write out the class boundaries here, all right, so this would be 10.5 to 20.5. And then this would be 20.5 to 30.5, 30.5 to 40.5, 40.5 to 50.5, then 50.5 to 60.5. So that's the first thing, right? To know what our class boundaries are right there. It then says, right, so remember the question is asking us what is the probability that the volume of petrol needed to fill its tank is more than 50.5 liters. All right, so using that information, let's try to see if you can figure it out. Using your table and those class boundaries, a minute or so. All right, then. So I hope you realize that in order for us to be able to find the probability, we first need to figure out the actual frequency, right? So it says greater than 50.5. That means that they're talking about this class right here. But the first thing I need to do is to figure out the actual frequency of this class. So let's take the 129 from that. And when I do that, I'm going to end up with 21. 21. All right. So probability here. So the 21 that we just found, we now have to divide that by the total. And the last number in any cumulative frequency column always gives you the total frequency. So the 150 is basically our total. And they said to leave our answer as a fraction. So let's try our best to simplify this. 3 into this is 7. 3 into this is 50. So my answer is 7 over 50. It then says Byron estimates the median amount of petrol to be 43.5 liters. Explain why Byron's estimate is incorrect. Right? So explain why Byron's estimate is incorrect. Anybody think they can explain that to me? How do we actually find median? Yes, man, I'm going to send this to you as well, Mr. Small. So I'm going to send this document to you as well. right? So how do we find median? Right, do we remember how do we find median? Because they say that he estimates that the median is about 43.5, but they want us to explain why his estimate is incorrect. Right, so if we remember here, no, let's see if you remember. How do we find median? Remember that we can find the median position, right, by saying n over 2, where n represents the total frequency. So when we have our 150 and we divide that by 2, that means that the median is in the 75th position. And then that is where your cumulative frequency comes in. All right. So your cumulative frequency here, 24. So 11 to 20 stops at 24. 21 to 30 stops at 59, but you want 75. So 75 is going to be somewhere between 59 and 101. That means it falls in the class 31 to 40. So his estimate has to be wrong because the median is in the class 31 to 40. The median lies in the class 31 to 40. And that is part D of the same question. And then here now part E, the final part of the question, it now says on the partially labeled grid, construct a histogram, to represent the distribution of the volume of petrol needed to fill the tanks of the 150 vehicles. All right, so on the partially labeled grid below, construct a histogram to represent the distribution of the volume of petrol needed to fill the tanks of the 150 vehicles. All right, so the first thing here, whenever we're doing histograms, you use either the midpoint midpoints or boundaries. All right, so you use either your midpoints or your boundaries. And we obviously have our boundaries for this one here because we wrote our boundaries earlier. Remember that these are all representing our boundaries right there. So our 10 to 5, 10.5, sorry, to 20.5, those, that is just part of our boundaries. So those are what we're going to use to represent the different classes. As well, before you can draw the histogram, you have to know the frequency of each of the classes. Right, so the frequency of that one is 24 because nothing doesn't come before it, sorry. The frequency of this one, 1 minus 1 minus 101, that gives me 28. And so those are the frequencies of each of them. So using those frequencies now, that's what we're going to use to draw our histogram. So that is 0. And then I would start right there, and that is where I'd put my 10.5. And then my 20.5. And then my 30.5. $50.5, 60.5. Right, and remember that a histogram basically looks like a bar chart, except that it has to be joined together. All right, so the first one is 24, then we have 35, 42, 28, 21. All right, so make sure that you guys make a note of those so that you can tell me. So the first one is 24, and it's about you trying your best to estimate where the 24 is. So if this is where 30 is, so I mean 20, if this is where 20 is and this is where 30 is, there are 10, there are basically 10 of these little small lines between them. So If 20 minus 30 is 10 and we have 10 of these small lines, then how am I going to figure out the value of each of these small lines? So 20 minus 30, so 20 from 30, so 30 minus 20. That's going to give us 10, and we're going to divide that by the amount of the amount of those with the small lines that come in between them. And that's also 10. And so that is how we would know that each of those small lines actually represent 1. So each of those small lines represent 1. And so if we want 24, which is the frequency of the first one, if this is where 20 is, then I need to go 4 spaces up to get my 24. So 4 spaces up is right there. And obviously this ain't going to look perfect, but you guys have to use a ruler when you are doing this. And so that's my first one right there, which is 24. What's the value of the second one? 20.5 to 30.5. What's the frequency of that one? What was the frequency of that one? We never wrote it down. All right, 35, 35, then 42, 28, 21. So 35, and so 30 is here, 40 is here, 35 is right there in the middle of both of them. And again, obviously mine isn't going to be drawn that perfect. So that's 35. Then I think the next one is 42. I think it's 42. So if 40 is right here, 42 is 2 above it. So 2 above it. Two above it there. And then I think, what's the next one? I think it's a 28. 28. So 25, 26, 27, 28. And then the last one is 21. And again, obviously mine isn't drawn. Mine don't look good at all. It don't look straight, but you get what I'm on. You get me? So volume, liters, da da da. As you can see, and as you can see, the histogram does not have cumulative frequency on the y-axis, it has frequency. So you have to find the frequency of each of them and use that. All right. And down here, obviously, this is where our volume is. And so once you draw yours proper with your ruler, you know you get a 3 marks. So don't make your one look like mine one, because if you ever make your one look like mine one, you won't be getting those 3 marks at all, at all, at all. All right, you can't make it look so ugly like mine one. Right, but that's how we would do. That's how we would do uh uh a histogram question right there. All right, let's move on to another one here now. All right, so look at this question here. So a lot of times when they ask us for the interquartile range or the semi-interquartile range, they actually give us like a cumulative frequency, and then we find it from the cumulative frequency. But a lot of persons do not know how to find it when you are actually given raw data like we're given right here. So it says the mark obtained by 10 students in a test scored out of 60 are shown below. Da, 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 da. There we have that right there. For the data above, determine 1, the range, 2, the median, 3, the interquartile range. Then 4 talks a little bit about the probability here. So let me zoom in. I don't want to zoom out too far. All right, so before we focus on the probability part, let's do those three questions first. All right, so can you find the range? Can you find the median? Can you find the interquartile range? All right, so how do you find range? Remember range, highest minus lowest. What's our range here? What's the largest? Well, not largest, but what's the highest value when we look at our values here? What's the biggest one? That's 45 minus what's the smallest one? That's 26. What's our answer? The range is going to be 19. All right, 19. Next, we want to find the median. All right, you want to find the median. Remember that before you can find the median, you have to first arrange the numbers in ascending or descending order. All right, so let's do that first. So 26, then what's it, 29, then 31, 35, 37, 38, 38, 38, 338s. And what comes after that number? 42, and then finally 45. So make sure, so you always have to remember that you have to arrange it first in ascending or descending order. You don't have to do it in ascending order. You can do it in descending order as well. After that, now you try to figure out what's in the middle. And there are a number of different ways how you can do this. You can physically cross them out, or there's a little formula. There's a little formula that we can use. Right? There's a little formula that we can use, and I'm going to show you both of the ways. So if you cross them out, basically one on this side, one on that side. That's how you basically do it here until you end up with what is in the middle. But what do we realize this time? We realize that we have two in the middle. So what do? You're going to add those two together. That's 37 plus 38. And then you divide it by 2. That's going to give us 37.5. And that's one way how you can find the mean. Right? You can also find the mean another way as well. So we can find the mean another way as well. Let me do it a little bit up here. Let me do it right here. All right. So mean, sometimes we use Q subscript 2, and that's equal to this little formula here, n plus 1 over 2. And you see n stands for number of, and that's scores. So basically number of data values. And so you see that that's 10. And n, when you have a frequency table, n will stand for the total frequency. So you have the frequency table and you add up the frequency of each thing and all of that. N would stand for the total frequency. You have raw data right here, so it's just basically the amount of things that they gave to you. So they gave us 10, so it's going to be 10 plus 1 divided by 2. That's going to be 11 divided by 2. It's the 5. So basically, this is the position. So it's always that. So this formula does not give you the answer. It gives you the position of the answer. So it gives you the position of the answer. And so if I go to the same numbers that I arrange in ascending or descending order, and again, you still have to arrange it in ascending or descending order, it says 5.5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But because it says 5.5, it's going to be somewhere in the middle of these two numbers. So that's why we still would have to add these two numbers together. And whatever you get after that, that's going to be your answer. All right. You see, whenever they give you one like this, right? Whenever they give you raw data and they ask you to find the median, we're now going to add the median score to this now. So I'm going to add the median to this now. So the median, the 37.5, we're now going to add that data value into everything, into the set. All right. So what we want to find now, we want to know, figure out what the interquartile range is. Right. So this is a little formula. So it's a little formula that we use to find our interquartile range. The interquartile range, which is basically IQR, equal to the upper quartile minus the lower quartile. All right, so the upper quartile minus the lower quartile. The upper quartile, we basically call that Q subscript 3. And how do you find it? We find it using this set of formula here. And again, people, it's all about the position. So it just basically gives you the position of the numbers. That's what it does. So it is 3 into n plus 1 over 4. All right. So remember here that up here, n, when we go back to what we did to find our mean, we had 10 numbers. So we had 10 plus 1 that gave us 11. However, remember that I told you that we're now supposed to add in. So you're supposed to add in the median value into it. So we actually have 11 numbers. When you include the 37.5 into it, we actually now have 11 numbers. So based on that, it's going to be 3 into 11 plus 1 over 4. That's going to give me 12 over 4. And when you work out all of that, it's going to give us 9. And again, remember, it's not the answer, it's the position. So it's the 9th position, which means it's basically the 9th number. When I add that, when I not add it, but when I figure that out, let's work it out. When I try to add, why am I saying add? When I try to count out these numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we get 38. So it's actually 38. And then if you want to find the lower quartile, that is Q1. Right? So we call that Q1. And it is n plus 1 over 4. And again, n is basically 11 now because we added the 37.5 into it. So 11 plus 1 over 4, that's 12 over 4. It is the third number. The third number. 1, 2, 3. What's the third number here? The third number is 31. And so my interquartile range is the upper quartile, which is 38, minus the lower quartile, which is 31. All right, next. The probability that a student chosen at random scores less than half the total marks in the test. All right. So when you go back to the information, remember it told us that in a test scored out of 60, so that means the total marks is 60. And so if it's a half of it, that means they want those persons who scored less than a half of 60. A half of 60 is 30. So they want those who scored less than 30. Pretty simple here. Go here now. We already have our numbers arranged. 26, 20, and 29. Those are the only two numbers that are less than 30. So that gives us 2. And they said probability, so you have to put it over the total. There are 10 numbers in total. What is my answer? My answer is 1/5. All right, so just in case you probably get a question like that where they give you raw data and ask you those questions, because a lot of times they would tend to give you a frequency table and ask you to find those things from the cumulative frequency curve. All right, next, let's move. It now says the frequency distribution below shows the masses in kilograms of 50 adults prior to the start of a fitness program. And there we have our table. It then says on the grid on page 23, using a scale of 2 centimeters, represent 5 units on the x-axis and 1 centimeters to represent 1 unit on the y-axis. Draw a frequency polygon to represent the information. All right, so draw the table. While you draw the table, let me write some little piece of little important piece of information here. So to draw a frequency polygon, and remember that you just need to sketch a table, you know, so it not have to be not perfect. So just sketch it, it not have to be not perfect. All right, so the only thing about this is just that they gave you the midpoint. So you don't really have to worry about that. But if they didn't give you the midpoints and all they did was just to give us the mass and give us the frequency and they said draw a frequency polygon, then I need you to know that in order for you to draw the frequency polygon, you're going to have to utilize your midpoints first. All right. So in this case, they found the midpoints for us, so we wouldn't have to worry about that. But what if they did not actually find the midpoints for us? How would we find it? Right. So the midpoint right here is 62. But how did they actually get it? They actually did this. So they said 60 plus 64, and then they divided by 2. Right. And same thing for this one, 65 plus 69, and then they divided by 2. And you would realize that it's actually following a little pattern here. You go up by 5. So 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5. And that's basically how you would get your midpoint right there. All right, so on the grid below, using a scale of 2 centimeters to represent 5 on the x and 1 to represent 1 on the y. We have to look on our thing here. So the frequency, remember that frequency always goes on the y-axis. All right, so frequency always goes on the y-axis, and you're going to put your midpoint. So the mass, we're not going to use the mass, but the midpoints for the mass, that's what we're going to use on our x-axis. So again, on the x, it's 2 centimeters to represent 5. All right. So that's our 0 right here. So when you're drawing these type of diagrams, you use what we call an L Cartesian plate. It's basically, you won't draw the normal T that you would draw, right? So you'd basically draw the L. Because I do have a ruler, I'm gonna actually draw the L, but you would use your ruler to draw the L. I'm just gonna number it. 5. So we're gonna put a little break here because we're not gonna move from like 0 to 5, right? So we're gonna jump some, and the first one is gonna be the first midpoint, which was 62, and then 67, 72, 77, 82, 87. I'm just gonna write that. I don't even remember what number we start with. 97. Let me just write it all the way up. 97. Oh, it was at 89. Oh, it was 87. But anyways. And the biggest frequency here is 15. So I have to go up to at least 15. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And please remember that when you're drawing this, use your ruler to draw the L first, right? And put on your little arrowheads and all of those kind of stuff there. Right, labia axes and all of those stuff there. Put in a little title. You know, and so this is frequency distribution, masses, kilograms, 50 adults, all of that. So let's go here. The first one here, the frequency is 8. So 62, 8. Let's change our color. So find 8. Need something bright. All right. 67, that's 11. And please make sure you're using a ruler. And I do have a ruler right here using on this. So when I'm finished putting in the points, please make sure that you have a ruler to draw yours with the ruler. Next, 15. So 72 is 15. '77 is 9. So 77 is 9. '82, 5. And 87, 2. What color can we use that's gonna show up? Don't want to use but the red. So you do know you join all of these together. And again, people, please use a ruler. So please use a ruler. No, I'm missing a point. I know I'm missing a point here. It's supposed to go up. All right, there it is. Okay. So that is that. But remember, it's called a frequency polygon. Frequency polygon. Remember, a polygon is a closed figure. So close it up, basically. All right, so again, you use a ruler. All right, so you basically close it up. I think I'm gonna have to draw it, actually draw it. All right, you can do that. What some persons do, that some persons just draw it like down there and like that. The key thing is about just making sure that the points, right? So you see the points, making sure that the points are correct. That's the key thing. Just make sure that your points are correct. And make sure that your graph, so based on the scale and thing that they gave to you, make sure that you're using the right scale and everything as well. All right, so we're on our way, we're on our way, we're on our way. On our way. There we go. The table below shows the speeds to the nearest kilometers per hour of 90 vehicles that pass a checkpoint. All right, people, again, draw your table, and I want you to try the first couple questions here. The upper class limit is, the class width is, 16 vehicles past a checkpoint, no more than. All right, let's see. All right, so for the class interval 20 to 39, as written in the table above, complete the following sentences. The upper class limit is, what's the upper class limit here? For 20 to 39, what's the upper class limit? Can someone tell me, what would you write for your upper class limit? All right, in my chat, I saw someone write, what's that? 39. All right, 39. So 39, the upper class limit. Remember, the limits are are basically the numbers themselves. So these are the limits. All right, so the numbers themselves are basically the limits. So you see the numbers themselves, the range, that's basically the limits. So if they ask for the upper class limit, they're asking you basically for the bigger number. So 20 to 39, upper class limit 39. Now they want the class width. Class width, all right. So if we remember the question that we did previously, class width, let's see if we can find it quickly. I think it's this one here. So the class width, remember that in order for us to find the class width, well, the first thing that you have to do is that you have to try to figure out what the class boundaries are. All right, so that's the first thing that you're going to have to try to figure out what the class boundaries are. So they want us to find the class boundaries first, basically. Where is it? All right, so it's here class width, upper class boundary minus lower class boundary, and 30.5 minus 20.5. So we need to find our boundaries. I'm going to clear right here. Let's put them right here. So our boundaries here, we have 0, so that's 0. 19.5, and then this is going to start with 19.5 to 39.5. Then this one starts with 39.5 to 59.5. Then 59.5 to 79.5. 79.5 to 99.5. 99.5 to 119.5. So they want the class width of the class 20 to 39. So I'm going to say 39.5 minus the 19.5. The class width is 20. All right. It then says 16 vehicles passed a checkpoint at no more than. All right. And so we're going to need to go to our table right here. So 15 vehicles passed a checkpoint at no more than. So we're using our cumulative frequency. If we go to the cumulative frequency, all right, so 5 vehicles passed at no more than 19.5. But when we now go down to 39.5, right, why not subtract the upper class limits to find the class width? You can do it. You can do it that way as well, of course. You can do it that way as well. If you do it, but because they said for the class interval, right? Because they said for the class interval, 20 to 39 only has one upper class limit. So I cannot use like the 59.5 because it's not in the class that they're talking about, the class interval, which is the 20 to 39. So that's why we use what's in that class interval, which is a 20 to 29.5, sorry, and the 19.5. Right, but if they did not specify, if they just asked what's the class width of the classes, then you could do it that way, of course. All right. So 16 vehicles passed a checkpoint at no more than. So we have to go to our cumulative frequency. All right. When we look at 19.5, 5 vehicles passed at no more than 19.5. When we look at 16.5, or not 16.5, when we look at 16, so this is basically telling us the amount, the total amount of vehicles that passed at that particular time. All right. And so for the 16 here, it is the 39.5. And so it's no more than 39.5 kilometers per hour. And that's the reason why they said for the class interval 30 to 20 to 39, because as you can see, that answer lies within that class there. It then says complete the table shown above by inserting the missing values for the cumulative frequency column. All right. And cumulative frequency here. So we always start with the first one. So this is 5 plus 0 because nothing comes before that one. And then how do I get 16? It's actually the 5 that is here plus this one. So 5 plus 11, that's how we would get 16. And then we start with the 16 and you add it to that. So that's how you work these things out. That's 42. I start with the 42, add it to the 37. That is 79. I start with the 79, add it to the 9. 88, start with the 88, add it to the 2. 90, and I need you to realize that these two numbers are exactly the same. All right. And when you're doing cumulative frequency, the last number in the cumulative frequency is always equal to the total frequency. All right. So the question says that the table below shows the speeds to the nearest kilometers per hour of 90 vehicles that pass a checkpoint. All right. And as you can see, when we added our cumulative frequency together, the last value was 90. All right. It now says on the grid provided on page 21, using a scale of 2 centimeters to represent 20 kilometers per hour on the x-axis and 2 centimeters to represent 10 vehicles on the y-axis, draw the cumulative frequency curve to represent the information in the table. On your graph, draw reference lines to estimate the speed at which no more than 50% of the vehicles drove as they passed the checkpoint. What is this estimated speed? All right, so I want you guys to try that for me, please. Here is our table. They want us to use the grid. So take your graph paper, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes to try that quickly. Right, so it says a scale of 2 cm to 20 kilometers per hour on the x. So that means that the speed has to go on the x. And it's a cumulative frequency curve. So that means the cumulative frequency is what is going to come on the y-axis. All right, so make sure that you're following the right scale. And remember that your curve is always drawn. It's called a curve because you draw it free-handed. All right, so try your best to draw that free-handed and let's see. Well, obviously mine isn't going to look good, so don't expect me to draw anything perfect looking, but I'll try my best to make it as perfect or as proper looking as possible.
So continue, sir.
Oh, sorry about that. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that. So I was saying, make sure that you check your scale to make sure it's proper. So I was just checking back my scale before I started drawing anything. And it's a good thing because I made a little mistake. All right, so everything is all right now. So let's go now. So let's use a color that we can see. So the first one, 19.5 is 5. And you have to just try your best to make sure that you can figure out where the numbers are, right? So 5 is going to be right here. Then the next one is 16. 16 is right here. So just plot your points properly. Then what? 42.79. So we have 42. Forty is there. 42 is right here. Then we have 79. 79 is about right there. Ooh, hold on, that's a bit too far. That's where 79 is. Then 88, then 90. Then 88, that's about right here. And then for the final one, 90. And again, people, please remember, you don't kill me. All right, do not kill the eye. Do not kill the eye. Oh no, do not kill the eye. I'm gonna try my best. So I'm gonna try my best. All right, so let me just zoom this out to try to get everything at once. All right, and people, you have to just do this free-handed. As you can see, that not look good at all. Awesome. It is obviously very difficult for me because I don't have an actual graph paper. So I'm probably gonna have to draw and stop. When you're drawing this, it's not recommended for you to draw and stop because when you draw and stop, you're gonna end up with like little double lines like this little part right there. But because of what I am using, I'm just trying to do it this way to best get it showing. All right, so that's 100 baht, but let's try it again. All right. Let's try again now. All right, so people don't kill me. Don't look so great, but it not look so bad either. Let me just fix the line here. Not really look so bad either. Awesome. That is definitely not coming up properly. This part, this second part, it just. All right, let me zoom in this part. And again, you have your graph paper and You can turn the graph paper, so you can turn, so you can turn, so you can turn. So kind of make it a little bit more easier for yourself. All right, so I should be able to get this now. Right, and again, people, it's not going to be perfect. So mine isn't going to be perfect. All right. Almost got that. All right, so something like that. So basically, just make sure that your points are on point and you take your time and you have to practice this, practice until you can get these kind of curves nice and easy right here. So again, don't look on my ugly curve. All right. Well, let's answer the last question right here now. And it says, under your graph, draw reference lines to estimate the speed at which no more than 50% of the vehicles drove as they passed the checkpoint. That is basically just them asking you about the median another way. All right. And so the total was 90. So the first thing we have to do right here is to figure out the position by dividing the 90 by 2. They want us to figure out what is at the 45th position. All right, so remember that your speed is on your X, so find your 45 on your Y. 45 is there. Let me get this thick piece. So 45 is here, and using your ruler, you draw a straight line across to meet that. All right, and then you do the same thing. So when you draw the line, the horizontal line across to meet your curve, wherever it touches the curve, you then draw a vertical line down. What's that? You draw a vertical line down. Right, so again, mine is not drawn to scale that perfectly. Well, let me look at what I am getting and you tell me if you're getting the same thing. That looks like 60.5, 61.5 in that region. Can you tell me if you're getting the same thing? What do you get when you draw yours down here? All right, so mine looks like a bit like 60.5 or 61.5, 61 in that region right there. All right. Okay, so someone says that they're getting 61.5. Almost the same place. And as I said, mine isn't really drawn to scale. So as you can see, mine isn't that bad if I got basically almost the same thing that you would have gotten right there. All right. And that's actually it. That's actually the last question that we have, and it's right on time as well. Right on time, right on time. All right, people. So thank you for everyone who tuned in to watch us here live. Please remember that we have a marathon, a live online marathon, July the 4th. All right, open to everybody. All right, very affordable, open to everyone. The last Sunday before the exam, because the exam is on July the 7th. So we have a marathon July the 4th that everyone who's interested can come sign in. So you just call the number that you see right there in the description and you can get me and we can talk about it. All right. So for everybody else who's here in my class, once I said, remember that I'm going to send, I will send the document that we used today here. So I'll make sure I have it saved. So let's save. There we go. And then we can now call that. All right, everyone. So good night, everyone. All right. I'll see you guys next week. All right. So enjoy your weekend, everyone. Have a great week.